And now, the most underrated voice in all media. The Alternative's alternative. Chuck Ochelli.
29th day of April 2016, according to the Pope's work schedule, or what it is we might refer to as a calendar. And the Ochelli Effect is live right here on American Freedom Radio at AmericanFreedomRadio.com. I do appreciate you if you found us on some other network. There are many other affiliates who do replay the show, repost, etc., etc. And, you are also greatly appreciated, but the live show does originate with AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Real quick note for the listener, it is appreciated when you go to AmericanFreedomRadio.com and you hit the Help Us Grow banner, which is where you donate a little bit to help keep us on the air. Lots of noises in my headset at this point because I am trying to raise my guest. For the first hour, Gillian Trebilcock will join me at some point, and this is the way it's going lately, guys. Friday nights are strange enough as it is, and I'm going to make it even stranger next week because I'm going to bring on a pretty unique guest. I've got a couple of interesting people. That are going to come up on the show shortly. I won't announce them just yet, but I did get in touch with Tom Rosley today. He's one of the people that I am willing to share as an upcoming guest, and that's going to be fun. Tom Rosley, of course, runs a JFK forum, and yes, we will be discussing the Kennedy assassination that night, but, I don't discuss it every night. Although it does seem to come up as a topic of conversation, as we learned last night with Casey Gain, even though we were discussing the CIA's secret war in Jamaica, how interesting it is that the tentacles of many of these things continuously lead back to the great watershed events of the 20th century. Quite often you find the dead end ending up with World War II, presidential selection processes, the coup d'etat, which occurred on November 22nd, 1963, the dual assassination year, of 1968, the murder of Malcolm X, the interesting time period when a man who was not elected to be president or vice president actually took office as the POTUS of the United States. That was Gerald R. Ford, right? The guy who was nothing more than a lowly representative from Michigan and turned out to be one of the pivotal members on the Warren Commission, as well as becoming the unelected but yet completely selected President of the United States. That was in the 1970s, an interesting time. But all of those events always seem to lead to other things that occur a little later on, and don't we discover how, the Bushes the Bushes are often players in the game, and of course they're crime family partners in politics. Would be partners in crime, but I think they're the crime family partners in politics instead of political families partners in crime. Well, I guess either way it would work, wouldn't it? Either way, the Clintons, those two wonderful human beings, they're not too sociopathic or anything, are they? Oh, that's right. We actually have Hitler being considered to be the POTUS this year. Lovely stuff. Anyway, we do have a chat room at AmericanFreedomRadio.com. If you go in there, you can interact with other people. I try and put out that link, and who knows who might or might not show up in that sucker from time to time. Seems as though guys go there during the second hour of the show a lot more than they do the first hour of the show. But, of course, I will be taking a look at it from time to time, so if you have some input and you're not on my Skype list, which, by the way, anybody is welcome to join onto my Skype list, all you have to do is look up Charles.Ochelli space Ochelli. Okay. When you do that and you come up with the one that says I'm in Greenville, North Carolina, I think it still says, that right there is the way to get in touch with me on Skype, and I actually take all contacts, although I have to ditch some of them on occasion because they're all 24 years old, female, and want to invite me to a free webcam show, which, quite honestly, I don't have the time or the inclination to bother with, but hey, that's one of the wonderful perks of having a Skype account anymore. So, Gillian has not quite joined me yet. I think she's actually rebooting her computer. Either way, I know some of the things she wants to talk about, and actually, we had a video we were going to go over a little bit, and I'm going to save that until Gillian comes on, and I guess we'll talk about some other things. Oh, you know what I also forgot to tell you guys, of course, and always forget to mention, is that the website at Ochelli.com, that's Ochelli.com. Today, it's on my mind for sure because, hey, I spent some time and added 35-plus hours worth of material up there. A few things come from the American Freedom Radio archives, but there is a great deal of other material there that is either completely original to the website or originated with other networks, et cetera, et cetera. And I am working on that. It doesn't look much different from day to day, but material is being added, especially to the members section, as a constant, which I do appreciate if you go there and pick up a membership, or if you decide to go to donate a little something to contribute to my well-being. That's always welcomed as well, and there's a donate tab there. But anyway, now that we've got all of those wonderful little plugs and things out of the way, I am anxiously awaiting talking to Gillian, and I decided that, you know what, I was going to turn Friday night into sort of like the women-only night on the show. I do pride myself in making sure that I have plenty of female guests on my roster, okay? Now, The thing is, though, that I have a kind of like an all-boys night on Tuesday night with Roger Landry and J.P. Satilli, the 1-2 punch on Tuesday, but still trying to sort out how this is going to go on a Friday night. Of course, anybody who decides to drop me a line on Facebook or on Twitter, oh, that's right, I do have a Twitter account. I guess I'm on a bunch of different platforms, Tumblr and all that stuff. But either way, bottom line is that you can send your input there. Email, I do not often read or get to very often, let's just say. And let's see. Well, I might have Gillian on the line. Gillian, are you with me? Does not appear as though she is, but hey, we'll continue to work on those technical difficulties. There's also a YouTube channel, all that stuff. But you know what? You find all of it at Ochelli.com. So enough of talking about my crap and where I'm available. But like I said before, your interest and your feedback is always appreciated. And you know what? Write to the network, too. Tell them what you think of the show, whether you like it or hate it or whatever else. All of that stuff does get read and does get considered as we move forward with what it is we do. Anyway, so, looking at the news this week, I've got to say that it was sort of a surprise to me in one respect, but then again, completely uneventful when they started talking about Prince this week in relation to his death and the possibility that there were opiates on his person, and now there's going to have to be an investigation into that because of the pills and things like that. Well, what a shocker. Prescription medication might have contributed to his death. I'd say that I really don't recall Prince having the reputation in any of those deeper circles, let's just say, in the music business for having really serious drug problems. I would think that if there was any kind of habitual use of opiates, I'm willing to bet that it probably emerged later on after some sort of injury or discomfort that the man had. And guess why I say that? Because of my own personal experience and the stories I keep hearing about. Are we on the air is the question. Okay, so we are on the air, and you guys might have not heard the other side of that conversation I was just having, but hey, what can you do? There is no shortage of the use and sort of the promotion of use of various types of drugs, that's for sure. Opiates are an interesting topic, though, because they are extremely addictive. They do a lot of damage, that's for certain, even in the short term. And, okay, the thing is that, like I was saying, the damage done by the opiates and all that, and the fact that they're being promoted so so prolifically by the medical complex, as it were, those people they call doctors that are supposed to prescribe medicine in order to assist you, et cetera, et cetera. It's no big surprise that somebody winds up possibly overdosing or having it contribute to their death in some way or other. Like I said, the guy didn't really have a great reputation as an illicit drug user, but it would be no surprise to me that maybe in the past few years that something had come up where these things were being prescribed to him legitimately, and who knows where it went from there. Quite honestly, we're witnessing all across this country a condition by which a lot of people who have ended up with these prescriptions legitimately wind up seeking out the more illicit versions of the drug, the opioid, right, going and getting themselves heroin to deal with the fact that they're withdrawing from the opiate pills that were prescribed by the doctor. This kind of thing is pervasive all over this country, certainly. Now I know I've got Gillian with me, by the way, because I can hear her tapping on her keyboard. Gillian!
Oh, Chuck, hello. Hello.
Tell you, the tech gods conspired against us tonight so far.
So far, so good, as far as the tech gods. I was thinking, I don't say anything very sensible, so I can't see why it'd be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think the NSA was trying to keep you off the air, but...
no.
You never know.
You never know. They might get me better than I get myself.
See,
how are you, Chuck?
I'm okay. I'm going through this whole discussion about the recent, revelations, possibly, Prince ending up with the opioids on him and all that. And you know what? I'm thinking to myself that first of all, it would make sense if that happened based on the atmosphere, with the way these things are so easily prescribed to a lot of individuals, and they're highly addictive. And I even said I got personal experience with it for some years. For about 8 years, actually, I was completely addicted to the painkillers after a substantial neck injury. But the thing is, I definitely continued on using them long after they were probably necessary, and understand the position where people end up abusing these things. And I'm not saying that Prince did that. I'm just saying that it wouldn't be a massive surprise, especially if it's something that happened in the past few years. And quite honestly, they're very, very easy to make a mistake with.
Look, I agree, but I agree, and I listened to your show with Susanne Posel after speaking with me the previous week, and I thought these two want to be so responsible, which is an incredibly important thing to be, and not jump to any conclusions. And then I won't say which one of you, though I do know which one, said, oh, well, we'll just have to wait and see what reports and stuff come out. And I thought, who are you going to trust in all of this anyway? We'll never know. Not unless we happen to bump into Prince's sister somewhere who actually knows, it's very hard to get to the truth of all of these deaths, but there's an awful lot of them going on, just to go off on a track. But you know what I mean? We don't know, whether they planted drugs on him. How do you know? Why did he die in a lift? Where's the film surveillance? What did, it goes on and on. I don't know. I don't know what happened to poor old Prince.
No, I'm still reserving judgment, in all honesty. I'm just saying that with the recent media reports, look, a broken clock is right twice a day, and the mainstream media, you gotta definitely sift through it to get at the truth, a lot of times, but this would actually be something sensible if it happened. I'm not saying that it did.
What would be sensible? Where's the sensible bit?
If there was, say an accidental overdose or some misadventure that was caused by legitimate pharmaceuticals that were prescribed to him in some way, this is something that's an everyday occurrence in this country.
You know what? It just makes me think about Robin Williams' death. They really, I don't know whether they blew it or they made themselves menacing kings or whatever happened, but that death of Robin Williams is the worst one as far as I'm concerned. for me, my personal experience. And the fact that they predicted it in that stupid bloody animated TV show that they put on before, what was that called? Family Guy.
Mm.
They say that narcissists will tell you what they're doing because they're that smug, they think they'll get away with it. And they did.
Well, yeah, this is true. I can go for any of this kind of discussion, but I say that, that factually we still don't have all the evidence, and you can go and get, accessible. Well, you can get information regarding somebody's death from, the county coroner or whatever it is in the locale where he is. I don't know who you have to approach. If it is the county coroner, the city, pathologist, whatever, there is a way to get at the information, and I'm very sure that the family would take the time to be sure that the information was correct that was released.
Well, how can they? Well, yes, that's true, but then what can they do? Who knows what dirt they have on who? This is I'm pretty depressed at the moment. I'm not at all depressed, but I was watching things on chemtrails last night. Mm-hmm. All of these things that I was not interested in, right?
Right.
But now I'm interested in water and all these false, like DARPA and the way that with radar they can control the weather. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, what are they doing? Like, why do they want to target droughts in California? Is it for the gold? Like, why are they doing it? Like, I do believe that they are stopping the rain in California. Like, they showed amazing square bends, like right-angle bends in the weather pattern. And then this guy's there, and he's going, that's because they've used a radar to do this or whatever. There's all this equipment that these bloody little wankers are playing God with, and I don't even know why. But they're doing it. It's pretty obvious they're doing it.
No, and what's messed up about all that is that sometimes it looks to me like there's a battle going on between various factions that are trying to get their agenda forward, and they seem to have, similar weaponry, let's just say, but sometimes these things are contradictory to one another. You ever notice that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I sort of believed in, let's look at Al Gore and global warming, I don't know, I'm not really relating to what you're saying properly, but, how fast are they planning on doing this global warming? Like, our temperature just went up 15 degrees Fahrenheit this summer. I think I told you we had the hottest day on record, which was 115 degrees Fahrenheit or 45 degrees centigrade. Right?
That's
absolutely
intense.
Shocking. It was intense. We're so lucky we didn't have any fires, which I can bring you to in a minute. We had a fire in my horse paddock this week. But what's the point? Well, yeah, everyone's invested in water now, right? So all the money's gone out of oil. So they want to control the world by controlling the water, and they're doing it very, 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 very successfully. All the big bankers, the world bankers, have bought up all the water. They're the problem behind United Water in Ireland. They're the problem behind United Water in Australia. They're owned by Halliburton. It is a form of war. And they're doing it quite quickly is one way I could look at it. Because our temperature just went up the highest ever recorded, like an inferno. Why they want to wreck the headwaters of Six Rivers, which is where I live, at the headwaters of Six Rivers, I don't know how long. These guys are bigger, sneakier, nastier and greedier than I know, and I don't understand, and I need to understand what's in their head, like what's going on, why. What are they going to do? Just buy up all the water? They have to do it quickly. This is the other thing. For them to get any satisfaction, is there any huge satisfaction in drying up the world and creating a paradise for your children when you decide to let the weather patterns resume to normal and pretend there's global warming? Like, I always thought people who said there is no such thing as global warming, it's a hoax, had rocks in their head. But now I think some of those rocks have entered my head, and I'm believing them.
Well, I've always had mixed feelings about the global warming or climate change, as they call it now, right? Because you can see that the climate is changing, but then again, based on the amount of time that we've actually recorded the changes in temperature, who's to say that this is not, basically a natural occurrence? I keep making that argument.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. I mean, because we know that there's been drastic weather changes on the planet various times, mini ice ages, the ice age itself. There's definitely been hotter times. We can see it evidenced all over the place if you believe any of the science, right?
But, Chuck, the science is they're stuffing with our climate, and the question is why? You always have to say why, and then, so then the investigative journalist thing is either follow the money or, I suppose, follow the hatred or follow the greed. I mean, what's the point of wrecking climates everywhere? But the thing is, they brought a lot of water into the desert, so into Dubai, so they must have their part of it. They've got 4 airplanes waiting every time some radar or whatever can send some clouds their way. Then 4 airplanes are on the tarmac in Dubai. They fly up and then seed that rain and making it come down and creating rain in the desert. And, forget religion in all of this. None of these people are religious. They all think they are God.
Maybe that's the part we're missing. We can't quite wrap our minds around the idea of believing that we're a deity. Maybe that's what the problem is.
It's just phenomenal. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I'm actually in the middle of filling out a submission on water on water in Australia, and one of their questions, right? I've got to find it for you. I had to close all documents, but one of their questions. I mean, so many of the questions are just loaded with the assumption that the government has the power, right? And they're forgetting, and we are forgetting, and everybody in Australia has practically forgotten, that water is actually a public trust. It belongs to the people, I can see why I identify with the Irish. All you have to do is become the underdog and realise that they're ripping you off left, right and centre. But anyway, what I'm saying is water is a public trust. So they've got this thing there where they try to tick all the boxes. They use the word sustainability. Well, the way they're managing our water is not sustainable. We have just had a fire in my horse paddock, and my horse has just moved over to my friend's house, which is the head of the Loddon River, right? It's completely dry. The head of 6 rivers is completely dry, and the government, so-called government regulators, are allowing people to pump them out. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing with our planet?
I have no idea. Listen, how did the fire start near you there?
Oh, my girlfriend was doing a burn-off at the back door right next to the horse trough, right next to the horse's water tank, which they were allocated. They could have this tank of water. And she just, they'd been burning it off the night before. All fire restrictions were lifted. It was just at their back door. She went inside to get the washing. She thought, I'll hang the washing on the line, and do some outdoor things and keep an eye on the fire. And she comes back outside with the washing. And a wind has come out of nowhere, blown it under her car and under their ute and their caravan. So she grabbed the hose, put them out, and by then it had already taken off into the forest, which had never been burned off because it's a pristine water catchment area. So that's how the fire started. And then you get all the henny pennies. Then people were saying, they've had 4 fires there, whereas in fact they had actually had 4 in that gully, but then people wanted to blame people and on it went. But anyway, I think it's pretty well all sorted at the moment.
Well, that's a good thing. And the horses are okay because they just moved over to your neighbors.
Yeah, they did. They moved up the road a couple of days before.
Wow.
Yeah, which is very clever of them. I'm moving them back there tomorrow, though, today and tomorrow. But, yeah, a massive fire, 2 helicopters. A massive tiny fire, like it was in a little valley, but you couldn't get in there because the roads there were no roads in there. It was just, you know what bush is like? Australian bush, if you haven't burned it off for 100 years, it's just, you don't even dare walk in it unless you've got your father's trout fishing gumboots on. You don't know when a snake can pop its head up, you know. Or you stomp a lot to scare the snakes away. But I never walked all the way through there because it was just laden with litter.
Too much dead debris of all kinds of things, huh?
Absolutely. And now it's like a park, a black park.
Mm.
Welcome to Black Park.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is that the mushrooms that'll grow up after that burn will actually contain a lot more nutrients than they would have without it. So there's a benefit that's going to come up for you guys, right?
Oh, well, actually, we do a lot of mushrooming around here, and it's near a pine forest too, which is another frightening potential fire disaster. And we get pine mushrooms. We love them. But all the yummy mushrooms, yes, I'll go mushrooming. And I've just suggested to them, why don't you put gates in between your properties now, because the bulldozers have been in and they've put in some fire trails now.
Mm-hmm.
So if they put some gates in as well, then I can ride straight across to my girlfriend's house along the fire trail. Another girlfriend. Yeah.
There you go. Well, hey, look, as long as it's convenient that way. And actually, that fire you're talking about made the news over there, the TV news, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We love drama. It made main news. Yeah. And it was only a tiny fire. It did burn my electric fence, and they offered to buy me a new one, which was kind of them. But yeah, it was only a small fire, but very inaccessible. And nowadays, and it's what everybody fire should do everywhere, as soon as they get fires in the bush around Daylesford, there are so many gullies. If there are no fire trails in there, then they have to bring the helicopters in pretty quick. But also, not only because of the litter burden in the forest, but also the eucalypts. You know, they like to explode. All they have to do is blow up a bit of bark and send an ember over to another place, and then you've got another fire. They're very volatile, our forests. I really wish that we had maples and oaks and silver birch and all sorts of beautiful trees like that. But the Aboriginals, in there, they had an interesting fire management system, or one of their forms of agriculture was to do burn-offs to bring the kangaroos to certain areas so they'd be easier to hunt, or this is, what I've been told. And so they burnt a lot of Australia, and the hardiest trees that remained were the eucalypts. And then over the generations, the eucalypts have established, just like they have in California. Maybe that's why they've got...
Yeah, that's part of the problem right there in California, is that they often have these wildfires that come up that have nothing to do with anybody lighting anything. They just happen because of the dry conditions and the debris that builds up. And that's what happens out there a lot. And I'm actually surprised we haven't seen more fires in California as of late with the conditions the way they are. But it's an interesting topic, and I'll tell you something. This whole idea about water, what we see in this country is a lot of these corporate entities buying up the water supplies. Nestle has really been involved in it a lot, and especially in California, But it seems
the biggest.
as though,
yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
It's the biggest climbing investment there is. Like in Australia, it goes like this. What they do is the World Bank comes into a country, like they did in Ireland. I don't know if you've got any Irish listeners on tonight, but the World Bank comes into the country. Did I tell you this before? And they say, oh, you need some money. We'll lend you money, but we will lend you money in exchange for water rights.
Well, this is the typical thing. They go in for a lot of times with these, look, you have your resources, we'll give you the cash, and it'll be against the resources you have, and it doesn't matter what they are, but it used to be things like, deposits of silver, or, the prerequisites for aluminum, or, particular timber, whatever. They would do it for that, but now they've gotten to doing the same thing for water, it seems like.
Oh, they've taken over the world with water. I mean, the Rockefellers, they pulled out of oil and went into water. I mean, do you need any greater indication? And Halliburton owns water. You know, I think I explained it. Central Highlands Water, we live in the Central Highlands, is owned by United Water. United Water is owned by or in partnership with Veolia Water, and all of these names you should be looking at because they'll appear all around the world, and Sewers Water. But they have hundreds of different names. And anyway, you just trace them up, Sewers Water, then you've got Halliburton, then you've got Dick Cheney. You know, they're all the same people are buying up the water all around the world, the 1%, the world bankers. And also there's some Qatar trillionaire in there too.
Oh,
and
yeah,
a friend of mine, he rang up. I hadn't seen him for ages. He said, I've got very rich. I spent my whole time just trying to get rich, and now I'm rich. And I said, oh, yeah. And I talked about water. And he said, but I've got investments in water. And I said, yeah, I'll bet you have. But you don't know what you've invested in, you know, like it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So
it's good to have a friend like that. Well, there you go. You did say on the last show that you seem to be attracted to sociopaths, so it's possible that, you know, this makes sense.
Thank you so much. Look, I did try to minimize that, but, you know, there's truth in it as well. But it depends how you define a sociopath or a narcissist, or, you know, maybe they're just a reflection of my own wanky little self.
Well, you know, that's another possibility. And, you know, speaking of wanky little selves, you passed me a video earlier, which I'm going to try to play here part of it. Kind of interesting. Now, normally I would not take a look at stuff from Democracy Now, but this was kind of interesting to listen to the breakdown on the Trumpster and a couple other things, I think, in this video here. You mind if we go into that?
No, I'd like, just before we go into it, if anyone has a pencil and paper, I haven't actually written down the percentage, but that statistic that she quotes, get your pen in your hand, is worth quoting because it's phenomenal, the difference between the amount of air that they gave Bernie Sanders and the amount of air that they gave Donald Trump in mainstream media. So, yeah, let's go. I'd love to, Chuck. Thanks.
I see the media as a huge kitchen table that stretches across the globe, that we all sit around and debate and discuss the most important issues of the day: war and peace, life and death. And anything less than that is a disservice to a democratic society. It is critical in an election year to hear how policies affect people on the ground. Not to get the pundits, but to get the people themselves. They're bringing you the pundits, and this is true on all the networks, the pundits, who know so little about so much, explaining the world to us and getting it so wrong.
Now, I find that really interesting right there because have you noticed how often they have these experts who come in, you know, and they seem to be expert in nothing? Gillian?
Yeah, that's me. I'm an expert in nothing. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about you. Oh, I wasn't talking about you at all. But
no, okay. I'm joking. Go on.
Let's go back to the video. This is Amy Goodman, by the way, on Democracy Now! But interesting, this whole discussion here.
Yeah. The media manufactures consent for war, for candidates in elections, by bringing you more, for example, of one person, like Donald Trump. He is pumped into everyone's home. He can just stay in a gold-gilded mansion in New York or one of them in Florida. The rest of the candidates trudge from one state to another. Why does he get this unfiltered pipeline into everyone's brain, into your eyes, into your consciousness? It matters. The Tyndall Center did a report in 2015. They looked at the whole year. They found Donald Trump got 23 times the coverage of, say, Bernie Sanders. They found ABC World News Tonight did something like 81 minutes on Donald Trump, and I think they gave Bernie Sanders 20 seconds. Bernie Sanders is breaking every record. It's the only reason he's getting any coverage right now. I mean, the media, he is shaming the media. In March, he raised something like $44 million. Hillary Clinton raised $29 and change million. $44 million. That hasn't been done before. You break every record, and there's a blip. in the corporate media radar screen. It just shows how astounding it would be if he got anything near the coverage of the other candidates. Could you imagine where he would be right now? In this high-tech digital age, with high-definition television, digital radio, all we get is static. That veil of distortion and lies and misrepresentations and half-truths that obscure reality, when what we need the media to give us is the dictionary definition of static: criticism, opposition, unwanted interference. We need a media that covers power, not covers for power.
Don't you love that quote? I just love the way she says we need a media that covers power, not covers for power.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful piece right there. And
yeah.
See, it sounds almost like she's describing what independent media should be doing at this time. And that's what we aim to do, is give a bit of static, you know, give a bit of real static to the powers that be. I'm going to, finish up with a little more of this, but I mean, you got anything else to say about what she said so far?
No, I'm very happy with that. Let's keep going.
For the state, not for the state. And we need a media that covers the movements, that create static and make history.
A media that creates static and actually follows the movements that create history. What does that sound like to you, Jill?
That sounds like very true and not what we're having, and good on her for saying it. And I mean, the Bernie Sanders election is the perfect example. I mean, I've been sick of voting since I was 21, but the thing is, things have got so desperate now that not voting, I don't think, is actually going to do anything as long as there's nobody decent to vote for. I think America, I know I've gone over to Bernie Sanders straight away, but I think America is so sick of voting for people who then they discover are just puppets on a string. But I really think that Bernie Sanders, he's leading a new wave of saying the same sort of thing that she's saying, which is why she's using Bernie Sanders as a wonderful example, because he does seem like a fine old man who's, he said, I just want to rattle cages. I don't expect to win, though it would be wonderful for the country if he won or if I won. But even after the election, I will keep on talking about bringing things back to truth and equity and, covering and like the media's just, I watched people get away with it. I watched it happen in the 80s. In the 70s, we were all hippies, right? Well, we weren't. A lot of my friends said, "Oh, she's turned alternative," but oh yes, she's gone alternative, But as far as the people who had become alternative, there's still a very strong movement. And they have affected a lot of people, but we watched in Australia, we had a guy called Alan Bond, and he was just started the mantra, greed is good, and it became the me generation, the 80s. And so many people have been brought up in this me generation. The point being that the pendulum has to swing back to recognizing that selfishness is not how groups function and thrive. They collapse. They eat each other.
Yeah, you would think that it would swing back, and that's what we're looking for at this point, but reality is reality. I mean, he's laying off half of his campaign staff this week. He's well aware of the fact that he's basically beaten to the punch on the Democratic side of the equation, right? I mean, Clinton is in, that's about it, but he's still going to try and make some noise. Now, I don't know if he's just doing this so that he has a bit of a seat of power with the Democratic Party?
No, he said it 2 months ago, because I've followed him, because I got sucked in to Bernie Sanders because some people who I respect very much were saying Bernie Sanders is the guy. So I checked him out and I thought, well, Bernie Sanders is the best that I've seen. And he said, way back then, he said, we're going to be making noise after the election as well. Like, this is not just I'm running for president. This is I'm running for the publicity and the media attention to speak truth to power.
Well, see, that would be great if that's what he's going to do, but obviously he's not going to be the selected, party.
Well, they've rigged the ballot. We know they've rigged the ballot.
Well, yeah, that's true, but at the same time, there are people that jumped on me as soon as I said it too, because a few months back I said, I'm not going to cast a vote in this election selection process this year, but if I was, the only ones that I would think are even speaking, remotely sane are Sanders, and I said Kasich was too, because he was publicly. I mean, he's another, nut job as well, but publicly in his statements, he was making, some pretty solid points and trying to be sensible, et cetera, as opposed to that more hopped up sort of tabloid rhetoric that we saw early on. Okay, and Sanders refused to participate in any of that as well, and that's probably what made me gravitate toward both of them. Is it seemed like they actually took the process seriously, which I wish I could, but at the end of the day, honestly, I mean, it's still, well, which puppet is it going to be? Which puppet is the master going to stick his hand up the backside and operate, because that's really all we've got.
Well, you want the most rebellious puppet, and preferably the one with the least children that can be manipulated. I mean, look what happened to, this is hilarious for me to go over here, it may not even be right, but look what happened to that Fergie, the Princess Fergie?
Oh, yeah, I remember that whole...
Now, her mother was run over by a truck in Argentina when Fergie started saying that Diana was killed. That's all you have to do. You just kill a relative. There's just so many nasty ways these nasty people go about making sure that they control people. Like, I think the best people to fight this will be celibates with no children, and no family. It's just so hard because they're ruthless.
Well, it is weird because I've never really understood the great, tremendous fascination with the Princess Diana thing that a lot of people have.
No.
Outside of the fact that she was speaking out about, landmines, and she was utilizing her public persona to try and make some decent statements, I didn't understand what the point of her, allegedly being assassinated or whatever was. I didn't get it. Do you know what that's all about?
No, I know they planned to kill her for a very, very, very long time, and I think and she was a loose cannon, and they couldn't control her, and she was neurotic, and she was special, but she had her own traumas, and then married into that very difficult family. I mean, look, if I would like to be esoteric and reincarnation and all of that sort of thing about it, which is the Gillian Trebilcock view, is that she very well could have been a saint who incarnated and did her very best and actually set up quite a nice son to try and do something, to transform England in some way. Because she rattled a lot of changes. She did change things. But I think the reason they killed her is then she got with a cocaine-sniffing Muslim, and it just all got too much. And she played with the media a lot. I mean, she dug her own grave as much as she... I mean, I liked her, but I've got a lot of neurotic friends. I thought she was lovely. I mean, she was a victim of circumstance, but she was a very powerful, kind and sensible woman, and, she had issues. So why they killed her, I think, was something to do with Dodi Al-Fayed, and they say, I mean, her letter originally said Charles is going to kill me to make way for his marriage to Camilla, which did eventually happen also. Like, but who knows who manipulated Charles, and they all, you know what I mean? Like, who knows what really happened? I don't know either. How do I know? I don't know. All I can do is surmise again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speculation that I guess could be had about it, but it's just one of those things I never quite understood, because it's not as though she seemed to wield any particular power outside of her status, let's just say, as a tool of propaganda. That's the only thing I could ever imagine. And yeah,
well,
sure,
the landmine thing was a big thing. The landmine thing was a big thing, as far as they're concerned. And also, she was anti a lot of things in the monarchy, so the monarchy didn't like her too much. And apparently, I don't know who I read what, Prince Philip at some point didn't like her, and on it goes. I think, and also I read that she knew a lot more about the pedophilia than she should have known. And let's face it, as Stephen Roberts said to me today, the world's run by bankers and pedophiles.
Well, that does seem exactly the way it is. Like, I often wonder, what is the point of financial conquest at this point, since everything is mortgaged, and tied up in toxic assets anyway? It seems as though the game is over when it comes to the fake financial sort of crises that are all across the planet. I mean, everybody's credit cards are bust. That's basically what it comes down to. And who holds the notes but the banks? And so, therefore, isn't the game already over? I often wonder about that.
Yeah, well, now they're saying the world is running out of water, and they're trying to run the world out of water as much as they can. They're just trying to keep people in a state of desperation.
Well, and scarcity is definitely a mechanism of control, no matter what it is, whether it's capital or money or other resources. I mean, capital or money. That's funny. Capital or water or other resources. We find ourselves in a position where those that manipulate scarcity seem to control the reins of power. That's just the way it functions in a realistic sense. And truthfully, the people that make the laws and are supposed to be running the countries, I hold up air quotes for everybody listening, running the countries are really just the middle managers as enforcement arms for the greater corporate entity. And it does seem to all eventually trace back to one larger entity. No, we can never seem to name that particular singular entity, but the concept of the great octopus and all of the things that we're able to witness publicly being just the tentacles, I often agree with it, because it just seems as though no matter what you look into, eventually it seems to trace back to this very select group of people who hold the financial reins and their middle management staff, which does rotate from time to time, but I guess it's a generational affair with these people. And there you go. That's the closest thing I can come to describing, what they used to call the New World Order, or or the great corporate construct, or whatever it is that Jack Blood calls it. I mean, everybody has their own way of looking at it, but eventually we look back to one greater entity that seems to have all of these different extremities that we witness, and we only ever look at the extremities and never get to actually look at the head of the beast.
It's a culture of arrogance and selfishness. And those people have somehow, with that arrogance and selfishness, taken control of the finances and the media. Now, alternative media has come along, and it is causing a shift in the balance. But at the moment, still, the finances are the problem, and especially when they hypnotize people because of their own greed or need for finances themselves. Yeah, it very much relates to the monetary system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does seem to always go back to that. And, we're down to the last few minutes here, Jill, and not sure exactly what we accomplished. In the next hour, I'll have Susanne Posel on, and who knows what she's going to hit me with, but as I said last week, I was staying out of the news cycle as much as I could. Of course, this week I had to go back into it. I was particularly amused by, the fact that a lot of it was pretty much reminiscent of what I was looking at, almost a month before. It seems as though the song has remained the same, and somehow they're maintaining their viewership, although it has dwindled a great deal because there are so many options out there, despite the fact that, 5 or 6 corporations really own all of the big monsters. There are just so many little entities like, like this show, and the smaller radio networks and the internet guys and everybody doing a podcast and all this other stuff, that there are, a plethora of options for people to look to now. So, I don't know. Yeah.
The thing everybody really needs to be looking at now and fighting for now is their water and their constitutional right to water. I mean, if you want to be a step ahead of the game, and you're already a step behind it anyway, but if you want to even try and keep up with the game, look at your local water. Everybody, just look into water, because they're stuffing it up in millions of ways that we don't even know, like DARPA and they don't even know who's doing it. Well, some of the people I've listened to have no idea, who's doing all this weather control and for what reason. I've got one thought, which has got not a lot to do with anything. I've got a question, right. Which is, how come California and Daylesford, because that relates to me, and me living at the headwaters of 6 rivers, how come California and Daylesford, which are both rich with gold, are being targeted into a drought?
Well, you would think that with the gold on reserve, you might be able to repurchase your water, I guess, but, it depends on who controls it.
We already own it. That's the thing to remember. It is ours. Water is a public trust and a human right. That's where you have to work from. The water belongs to the people the same as it belongs to the trees. And then people come along and say, we'll just take this river and put it in pipes and put it in trucks and move it other ways and trade it on the money market and make money out of it. It stinks. It's just so wrong.
Right. I think we're going to have to do a show where you and I focus on water, by the way. I think that's going to have to be a complete focus one day. Because, eventually, Jill, they're going to get to a point where there's going to be a method devised by which they will charge us to breathe the very air we require on a daily basis. I'm waiting for that mechanism to emerge.
Well, there's something. I get it. I agree with you. And the same as, I've got this latest thing in my head. Okay, so you want to pump the water out of the ground, which is called groundwater because it belongs in the ground. Mm-hmm. And then, you start losing trees and stuff because your water tables drop. Why? When are you going to start pumping the air into the ground? I mean, it's just a stupid sentence, but it's just that mad.
Well, there you go. And people are calling you right now to answer that question, it looks like.
They seem to be keen, don't they?
Yeah, apparently somebody
Hi, I'm on
get a hold
air.
of it.
Is it important? I can't talk now. This is very funny because this man, he says, Mom, I called up yesterday and you blah, blah. And I said, I can't talk now. Goodbye.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that is, you know what? That is one way to end the hour. I think that
money.
Yeah, I think that's my cue I hear. Gillian Trebilcock, despite the fact that we had a bit of a technical issue at the beginning of the hour, we did finish it, and we wound up touching on a bunch of subjects. She will be back on the show, folks, I promise you. I think next week we might do something else. But we shall see. Everything is up in the air with the Ochelli effect. But stay tuned. The second hour, Susanne Posel will be on with me, and we'll continue on breaking down the world around us. Anyway, Jill, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chuck. Always a pleasure. Enjoy.
And we'll do this again. Anyway, stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back.
Now, the most underrated voice in all media. The Alternatives Alternative. Chuck Ochelli.
The second hour beginning a live broadcast, and hopefully it'll be a little smoother than the first one beginning on this episode of the Ochelli Effect here on a Friday evening on the East Coast as it is. It's just after 9 p.m. here. But anyway, wherever you may be, I hope everything is nice and steady and solid and not giving you troubles like it has been for me. But anyway, Susanne Posel from OccupyCorporatism.com is with me here in the second hour. And, you know, it's interesting to survey the world around us. And Susanne has a couple of stories I know we're going to get to that are going to be of interest here. And I actually don't know what the contents of any of it is. It's a total surprise to you and me both as you listen to it. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Suzanne, first of all, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing very good. How about you?
Well, disastrous in the first couple minutes of the show. You know, long, kind of difficult day. But, hey, what are you going to do? I'm here, though. I'm here.
That's life.
That it is, or at least it's life as I know it. But anyway, I mean, things going smoothly for you this evening, or are you having to deal with technological hurdles as well?
Yeah, everything's fine out here, and I live next to the bay, so you can't get any more technologically strained. My phone doesn't work other than using it for Skype or going on Twitter. So I've been going on Twitter a lot.
Oh, cool. I haven't been able to get to my Twitter account very much lately. I can hook to it through other apps that like, you know, will post things to Twitter for me. But going to my Twitter account, I don't know, it was giving me trouble earlier, but I don't know. Maybe I just need a whole cleaning of the CPU here. I'm not sure what's going on, but it is what it is. Meanwhile, you know, strange week, Suzanne. I mean, you take a look at, well, let's just do the obligatory Trump update. I found it kind of...
Several people were arrested today. Some people were pepper sprayed. Trump supporters were jumping on police cars. Trump said that when he got to Costa Mesa in California that he felt like he had crossed the border, which I don't understand. See, he's supposed to be sounding more presidential, okay? And he's having trouble with his now here's an interesting thing. Paul Manafort, okay? If you guys remember, Trump was like, I hate the lobbyists. When I become president, no lobbyist is going to get through my door. I don't want to even listen to them. I'm going to throw them the funk out, you know. And then he goes and hires one of the most, if you're going to hire a lobbyist, this guy is like the bottom of the, that scummy part of the toilet that nobody really wants to clean, but you know you have to eventually. It's that. That's who this guy is. And he comes out and says, oh, it's all an act. This whole time, Donald Trump has been acting. Now, the real Donald Trump will come out now, you know, as of, last week? But now we hear him making these comments in Costa Mesa. I feel like I just crossed the border. This guy is such a racist bigot. It's ridiculous. And for his campaign to come out and say that he's been acting the whole time, well, what that means is if that was all an act, then he was just pandering to the Alex Jones crowd to get them out to vote.
Well, see, that's the thing, though, right? Because you have this pandering parallel. Okay, what we're talking about here is that he's supposed to have been acting this whole time. That is the point that was made by Jones and with his extensive interview of Roger Stone, right? That all of this stuff really is for the media show. And what the truth is that this guy is going to side with all of you about 9/11 truth, about the real reason why we went into Iraq, about all this kind of stuff. And don't worry, hold on and just, buckle in and deal with the nonsense that he's got to put out in the media. But then again, you take a look at his statements this week, right? He's got this foreign policy statement that he gives in D.C.
Oh, my God.
And Now, I went into it with an open mind. I know a lot of people would find that hard to believe, but I said to myself, okay, I finally wanted to hear something about foreign policy, because before that there was just all of these sort of hyperbolic statements about, and I categorized it. I think even on this show with you, I explained it as the very gangster-esque kind of attitude of, don't worry, it's going to be beautiful, we'll take care of everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And his argument is, I don't want to tell people what my policies are because they're going to steal them if they do. And his supporters regurgitate this crap. But when you're trying to run for a job, when you're interviewing for a job, which is what they're doing right now, we want to know exactly what you're going to do. And I sat down and listened to that 38-minute and 24-second speech.
Okay,
and
let me cut you off right there, because I want to get out a couple of quick points, because I know you've got some to make. They're probably going to be similar, but you'll probably make them even more profoundly than I will. Here's the thing. I sat and took notes, and I said to myself, okay, this is what I understand about where he's going with this. And then I realized that a couple of sentences later, he was contradicting himself. Not necessarily, obviously, to somebody who's really a fan of something. If you cut together a bunch of sound bites, it sounds really great, but it almost sounded like the script was created so that you could yank different sound bites out of it and get wholly different ideas to appeal to different crowds. I felt as though it was a perfectly canned, rough recording of various sound bites that had completely juxtaposed views to one another and diametrically opposed views to one another. Like, in other words, how are you going to basically say that the NATO alliance is pretty much worthless, but at the same time you're going to need them to pony up more money and get more involved in things based on influence we're not supposed to have, and meanwhile doing this involving what used to be called nation building, spreading democracy, right? But not really spreading democracy. It was like every other statement in that speech, which, like you said, was 38 minutes long, is a contradiction. Like, you can't, how do you even, I couldn't wrap my mind around it after a couple of minutes. I was like, I'm lost at this point. There is
he
no...
says we shouldn't go to war, but he wants to fight ISIS in a more intense way than we've been fighting ISIS now. Well, that would mean that you have to go to full-out war. And you brought up the NATO alliance. Well, they're going to have to pay for that defense. This is another wall. This is, I'm going to build the wall and China's going to pay for it. We're going to pull out of NATO unless these people start paying us back for all this defense we're providing. NATO is a coalition. Mm-hmm. Lots of countries give of their military and their expertise to devote to NATO. It's not just America.
Well, right. No, but in the same respect, though, like I said, if you extract different pieces of the speech, they're very appealing to certain crowds, right? If you pull out the idea that other countries need to pay their fair share for stuff we're doing for them, well, that obviously appeals to people that have that attitude. That actually, in and of itself, if you can isolate that statement, appeals to me. I think sometimes we have gone way too far in investing ourselves in certain actions where we're not getting military support from our alleged coalition or alleged allies in a lot of places, but you can't in the same breath say, we're going to push forward with this. It's like, no matter what it is I'm deciding to do here, going back and forth, no matter how many times I contradict myself, at the end of the day, so long as we win, which is like saying, who gets involved in a war to lose, generally speaking, or at least who's going to publicly say that, unless, not even a military contractor who makes money no matter whether we win or lose is going to say that publicly. So, duh, excuse me, so long as we win. Did you catch that part of it too? It was like, at the end of all that crap, so long as we win.
It's because the people he's pandering to don't think things all the way through. They don't think about the unintended or the intended consequences of their action or possible other actions that they could take and the intended or unintended consequences of those. So if he just says what they want to hear in different ways, talking about different subjects, if it's always the same, China, and he's going to be the greatest jobs president, right? He's so good at jobs. Well, every company that he's ever put together, except for branding his name, has gone down the toilet, including his brilliant plan to open up a mortgage company less than a year before the collapse. Like, none of his advisors looked at the stock market like everyone else was saying at the time. If you go back and look at CNN and MSNBC and even Fox News, they were all saying something's coming, something's coming. None of his advisors knew about that, so he opens up a mortgage company. This man doesn't think things all the way through. And you don't want someone sitting in that seat who doesn't look at the future and say, well, if I go this way, what's going to happen? If I go that way, what's going to happen? What would be the best way to mitigate the damages and still get what I want, or perhaps I have to compromise? You know, one of the greatest things about our founding fathers was they gave the president full authority to be the diplomatic, the penultimate of diplomacy for the United States. That's a large part of what our president does. Mm-hmm. That is not – it's like he doesn't understand diplomacy. Okay, I get it. He understands business. But so does Jordan Belfort, and he was the guy, the Wolf of Wall Street, who screwed a bunch of people on penny stocks. Would you want that guy running the country? No. So why would you want someone who knows about crude business tactics and paying people like Roger Stone to lobby to change casino laws so his casinos can do better? Do you want that kind of person as your president? Perhaps you don't understand what the purpose of a president is.
Well, the other thing that was shocking to me is right after that speech, of course, we were treated to Bobby Knight, right? Same day, coming out and saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when I say that Bobby Knight said that Trump supporters could be equated to the founding fathers. Did you catch that piece of what Bobby Knight had to say?
I really couldn't understand what he was saying because his nose was so far up the pandering audience's ass. That is ridiculously stupid. These people are nothing like the founding fathers. You look back in history, and the founding fathers were wealthy people who were also involved in black trade of tea, a black market, pulling in resources from other countries and getting them off the boat and selling the best stuff at the highest price. They had a vested interest monetarily in the land that they were cultivating. That's nothing like the people who are supporting Trump. The people who are supporting Trump are disenfranchised white people who are pissed off because it's not 1953, because black people can do anything, including becoming a president, and perhaps a woman is not sitting at home like John Kasich's women waiting for him to run for an office so they can get out of the kitchen and go campaign for him. The world is different, and I'm sorry, but life changes, you know? If you grow old enough, you get to watch your favorite people die, you know, the people that you looked up to and your heroes. Everyone passes away, and that time passes away. We are in a new era where it doesn't matter. Guess what, folks? The transgender people have been peeing and pooping next to you for centuries, and you didn't know about it, so who the hell cares what bathroom people use? We're in a time where women actually might have some real rights and not just some things that are written up in policies and in laws that make it look like women are getting ahead, but they're really not. And that upsets the Trump supporters. It upsets the Trump supporters that we are recognizing that this country has no founding religion because the founding fathers understood the connection between religion and government, especially within a monarchy, really doesn't work for the people. That's why the Establishment Clause is in the First Amendment. So getting these people to understand what the founding fathers actually stood for is like oil and water.
Well, another weird aspect of this, too, is I took note of the fact that, 3 weeks break I took from watching the news cycle, okay? I really did. I made an honest break from it. And here's what happens. I remember 3 weeks prior tuning in to the audio of CNN of all places and being treated to Don Lemon having this debate between, black supporters of Bernie Sanders and black supporters of Donald Trump, and basically, the Trump supporters saying, oh, Trump's not a racist, and, you got to go to Trump Towers, and you don't know what you're talking about, and the other side basically flipping the same thing back at them. Well, you don't know what you're talking about because this is the way the guy behaves. And I found it really interesting that 3 weeks later, Don Lemon is still doing the same exact job, which is to have the black debate over Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump. And maybe occasionally they mention Hillary Clinton, which, if you take a look at it, folks, think about it very carefully. I figure that no matter which side of that coin makes it on in there, whether it's Trump or Clinton, because these are the two heir apparents to the dual supposedly two-party system, you're going to get just about the same thing, except that Trump has no idea when to shoot his mouth off and when not to. That's the bigger difference there. But outside of that, I figure we're going to get business as usual from either side of the equation. But meanwhile, I found it fascinating that exactly the same conversation was going on 3 weeks later with Don Lemon that had been going on, in the previous time period. And I figure it's probably been going on every single night. And is anybody even watching this or paying attention to this outside of me? Suzanne, what do you think?
We're all flabbergasted. I was talking to my father the other day about this, and he remembers lots of primaries, lots of presidents. He's almost 70 years old. He's never seen anything like this. And the RNC, the primaries with Gerald Ford, where Ronald Reagan almost became the nominee at that RNC, that was a crazy RNC. If you go on YouTube, you can find the archives. Just sit down and watch it. The people are just absolutely freaking out, screaming at each other. Fights were about to break out. Like I said, Ronald Reagan was almost nominated for the Republican nominee for that year. Gerald Ford barely got it. And even with all of that craziness that was happening, still what's happening today is unprecedented. You've never seen anything like this. I think it's a testament to where we are. I think it is a reflection of where the schism between progression and taking this country back is, and how deep that schism actually is. I think it's more of a tell of who we are than the people who are standing up there trying to become president.
Oh, absolutely. That's the best way to cap it. I'll ask you one last question, then I want to move away from the POTUS selection process. Somebody did submit a question asking me, are you in support of any of the candidates personally?
I've been asked that question several times, and I've decided not to comment. It's not my place to comment. Whatever I think personally, when I'm on the radio or when I'm doing an interview or on my show, my job is to be impartial. And so I don't think that my opinion matters.
Okay. No, just, you know what? I never shrink away from asking a question when it's presented. So that's why I ask it. I figured you might give an answer like that. And I actually find that anybody who is a journalist of any sort, if they have any kind of integrity whatsoever, what they generally do is not endorse or represent themselves as being in support of a candidate in a major election anyway. But all that being said, let's get away from this because, after a while I feel like I need a shower, all right? Because it's just, you're right. It does speak to where we've devolved to as a people when it comes to political discourse in this country, I figure. And I'm already tired of it once again. So let's move on to some other stuff. You said when we were coming on air that you had a couple of news stories from a round of interest, and I'm fascinated. I'm fixated. I want to hear exactly what you have to say.
I thought it would be funny to capture some of the more ridiculous things that are going on in the news, because if you turn on any radio show, you're hearing the same crap over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of other stuff going on, and it's hilarious. And you mentioned taking a bath. I thought that this first story would be great. Maybe you'd want to bathe yourself in Jesus water.
Oh, boy.
It appears that Katy Perry wants to purchase a former convent of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in Los Angeles. Now, the Archdiocese has given their blessing. Perry is trying to purchase this mansion for $14.5 million. But the little nuns who used to live there are upset about this, and they're actually fighting her in court. They don't want her to have this piece of property.
Okay, that's a strange story right there. Now, just coming at this completely unaware, I would think to myself, doesn't the Archdiocese control the deed to the property that they own? I mean, they probably have the say, and if they gave their blessing to it, the nuns just get moved along to some other piece of real estate that the Catholic Church owns, don't they? Isn't that normally what would happen?
Absolutely. And the Vatican has dismissed the sisters' case as well. So Pope Frankie is not on board with these little nuns. And I really can't understand why they're so upset about this. It's just ridiculous. It's a house, and these people purchased this property tax-free and got lots of subsidies for it that you and I paid for. So, I mean, we all have a stake in that. Hey, wait a minute. That $14.5 million that she's going to pay for this mansion, how come we don't see any of that money back since they got all those subsidies? I just have to wonder, the biggest welfare recipients in this country are religious organizations, and yet we never see a dime when they sell property.
Well, see, I would argue that the biggest welfare recipients are often the corporate entities, but it's all hidden so well that most of the time we don't see it.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Screw the Panama Papers. Delaware. 63% of the Fortune 500 companies in this country are they're incorporated in Delaware.
Yeah, they're incorporated there. And why is that, Suzanne?
Because they have basically no taxes. You can set up a shell corporation much easier and faster than you could in the Virgin Islands or even Panama. And they allow corporations to hide their assets in a way that is less costly for these companies. Because when you set up a shell company, you have to set up a lot of other things, and it could be costly if you're trying to hide billions of dollars. I'm sure that maybe $500,000 to hide your assets really isn't that much money. But if you're trying to hide $40 or $50 million, it might start to hurt. So go to Delaware. See, because in this country, we have it down pat. Nobody does it better. In fact, internationally speaking, the United States is ranked number 3 worst country for allowing corporations to set up shell corporations to hide their assets. Just saying.
Yeah, no, listen, makes perfect sense to me. I mean, when the Panama Papers thing hit and everybody was saying, how come there's nobody from the U.S., involved in it, the logical answer is because we've already got that stuff domestically. They don't have to go to Panama to do it. And that's the reality. I mean, there's a bunch of states that have different lax sort of laws regarding this, and Delaware is an excellent example. I mean, there are tons of companies, and not just the Fortune 500s, but a lot of other people that are trying to hide their assets, utilize incorporation in Delaware, and it's I don't know. I don't know what the point of it is, but it has been one of those things that's remained for a long time. So, yeah. And, I mean, and are these nuns that are objecting to Katy Perry, are they just objecting to it because it's Katy Perry, or
I think so.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I read a bunch of articles about it, and they didn't really have a reason why they were objecting to it, but I think it's because it's Katy Perry. You can't, when it's a real estate deal, you can't be a respecter of persons. I understand that her music and their religion would obviously clash, but if you look at it another way, she started out as the daughter of a Baptist pastor, and she started out singing Christian folk music. So, maybe there's some common ground there.
It could be, but you never know. I mean, I got to say, I'm totally lost, as to why I thought Katy Perry was, not exactly the most objectionable artist. It's not like Marilyn Manson was showing up to buy a convent, which
right.
little more upset if Brian Werner was out there doing that, which is his real name. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But it is a strange story, that's for sure. And I still am dumbfounded by the idea that, you know, basically somebody who is a rent-free occupant is objecting to the sale of a property. But, okay, maybe it's just me again.
Well, if you're confounded now, wait till I get to the next story.
Oh, okay. Well, here we go. What else do we have, Suzanne? This is going to be like Stump the Host. It's going to be like, let me see if I can get to something where Chuck will have absolutely nothing to say because he'll just be holding his head in his hands. Go ahead, sure.
Well, okay, this is a little interesting. And, you know, I live in Washington State, so I'm a little partial to this. The University of Washington, on their Facebook page, put a picture of what they're looking for when it comes to a cheerleader. Now, there were very strong objections and reactions to this post, including the suggestion that it objectifies women, the ideal candidate having bleached blonde hair, no glitter, no obvious nail polish to distract people. They have to have bronzed or beachy, glowing skin. False eyelashes are okay. About town girl lipstick. I'm not sure what that is, and I'm a girl. So I'm looking at this picture, and I've been looking at it for the last week because this actually happened on Monday. I'm a woman, and you know, I understand that women's issues as far as image is really big right now. There's a lot of talk about who is plus size. Amy Schumer was named by Glamour as a plus size woman, and she was offended by that. Ashley Graham is a plus size model, and she got on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and people were like, whoa, what are you putting a fat chick up there in a bikini? But this picture of the tryout look and what they're looking for in a cheerleader, I don't agree with the adverse reactions, and I'll explain really quickly. Being a woman, I understand that when you're marketing a product, you have to look for something specific. Take Fox Productions. When they were putting together the show Empire, obviously the show is about African Americans. So the majority of the actors that they were looking for must have been African American. And when they put out a call for people to read the script and do screen testing, obviously they probably put out a call for African American people. Was that racist or was that separatist? I think when you're pushing a product and you want to market it a specific way, and obviously cheerleaders are marketing the basketball team or the football team that they are promoting. And we traditionally understand that these women are better, what we consider better looking than the average woman, and we accept that. And all of a sudden now this poster of what to do and what not to do about makeup and how your body should look and your hair and what to do in general and what not to do, I think that they're just marketing to guys who want to see really thin chicks with jumping around and who look like they might want to have sex with them but probably wouldn't, because it makes the guy feel like, hey, you know, I'm enjoying my football game. Not only is my team winning, but this chick is hot. I think that all goes with it. I don't think that the University of Washington is wrong in putting this poster together. I think that this is political correctness gone amok.
Well, you know, and that was exactly where I was going to come down on this. Look, realistically, when you're recruiting cheerleaders, you know, it's what – I mean, did they mention specifics outside of the makeup? And, I mean, did they say you have to be thin? Did they say you have to be – what else did they say specifically words-wise outside of the picture?
I'm looking at the, you have to have a naturals or a spray-on tan. You can't have any exposed tattoos or any distracting nail polish. You have to be of a certain waist size. They want your breasts can't be too big because you have to wear a sports bra. They don't want things jiggling around when you're jumping around. They want you to wear sneakers that are comfortable but yet attractive, short outfits. They don't want your thighs to be too big. They don't want your arms to be too big because you're going to be wearing you're basically wearing a sports bra as you're jumping around out there. So I don't think, okay, we've got
I don't think
over
that's
half of the population in this country who are, as far as women are concerned, are a size 14 and over. I understand that to look like this and to say I can't try out for the UW cheerleaders because I don't look like this, that might be discriminatory. But in the same respect, again, it's a product, and not everybody is right for that. Not everybody is right for that part. That's why people discriminate and choose the right actor or actress. Does that mean that they were discriminating against the other ones? Yes, but in the way that that person wasn't right for the part. And I think it's the same thing here. The overall bigger picture is, why are we displaying sexual images to men when we're selling them sports? That's probably a better question.
Well, I think so too, but that's part of the way of the world at this point. So I say to myself, look, if you don't want to support this kind of thing, then don't. But at the same time, there is a niche for everybody when it comes to being more attractive for a particular look and these kinds of things. You don't need like when you're casting for a commercial, let's just say, right? You don't need the cheerleader type girls for every commercial that you're going to do. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you need somebody to play a part, and it has to look more reasonable based on what society views as that part, because at the end of the day, you're trying to appeal to a mass audience. And factually, when it comes down to cheerleading, I mean, if you want to question the whole industry, let's just say, of cheerleading in general, and you want to take a look at it as a whole, that's one thing, but I don't see how this is a big deal at all. But people got really upset about it, like they always do. Like this plus-size model thing is pretty funny to me, too, because look, at the end of the day, you're complaining about who they're objectifying. The person is being objectified, essentially, being made a part of a product anyhow, and you're complaining that only a select few get to be objectified? Why not worry about the objectification in the first place, as opposed to worrying about the standards by which one is objectified?
Exactly.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me again.
No. I think it's the changing times. Men and women. I mean, women have been saying this the whole time, but I think men are opening their minds to the idea that, look, women are going to look pretty and women are going to look sexy, and that's okay. But to use that as a selling point for a product or an industry or an idea is not okay. The objectification of women needs to stop. It's not that we can't find the other sex attractive, absolutely, but women are worth a lot more than what we do in the bedroom and what we do in the kitchen.
Well, completely, obviously. I mean, but the thing is that when you're talking about something like this, again, why do they hire, like you were saying with the Empire thing, they're not exactly going to look for somebody who looks like me, to be in that show. It's just that simple. And I understand that. I'm not offended by that. They also wouldn't necessarily hire a bunch of African Americans when they're doing, Sons of Anarchy or some biker show, because generally speaking, bikers are not black dudes, basically. So they're not going to cast for that. All this is somebody playing a part, essentially. And it doesn't define them as a person, and it shouldn't define the viewer or the person that's objecting to it, I think, either. I think that's the other question as well, because they're playing this role, playing this part, does that make them their role? Does that, reduce them to just that part? It can be one aspect of what it is they're doing, individuals who've been, typecast as serial killers in movies and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that that's what they are. It just means that was a job they were doing for a bit. And there's a lot more to them, I don't know. Again, it seems to be a non-issue that people invest themselves in emotionally, so they can feel as though they're righting some wrongs. And I think they're missing the target. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. And speaking of missing the target.
Oh, here we go.
Here we go. Glenn Beck. His crumbling media empire is evident in the fact that he just laid off 20 of his employees, 40 people, 20 in New York, a dozen in Washington, 5 in Ohio, and 3 working in the LA office where he was actually putting together a documentary. Also people in Columbus, Ohio. The reason for this is he had taken out a multi-million-dollar bank loan to save his Blaze.com and his media empire. He isn't getting the ad revenue. Surprisingly, nobody is really going to theblaze.com or glennbeck.com. So the money that he was getting from advertisers, including advertisers for his radio show, he's not getting those big bucks anymore. And apparently, him going out and traveling on the behest of Ted Cruz to support his candidacy, that's also becoming a huge distraction. People don't want to listen to the show if Glenn isn't on, and when his other dudes are on, they're just not interested. So I find that extremely, hilarious. But yeah, I kind of feel bad for the guy a little bit. He took out this multi-million-dollar bank loan, and looks like he's going to default, and if he does, it's a possibility that the Blaze might go down.
Well, isn't it fascinating?
In flames.
In flames, nice. Isn't it interesting that there is an actual limit to the ad revenue that can be generated by the right-wing, adherent media, right? There is a limit. And, Rush Limbaugh is still Rush Limbaugh, and these guys, they can't – I mean, look, you take a look at what Ted Cruz did this week, right? He selects Carly Fiorina as his running mate, even though he's been mathematically eliminated. That right there, I mean, pretty much sums up to me what's going on with the right-wing conservative movement.
He hasn't even been nominated, and he's already introducing his VP. Right.
Who I still will not let go of the fact that, during a discussion, during a debate some months ago, turns around and completely derails a conversation that could have been had about the legalization of cannabis, okay, and turns it into hey, I know all about drugs because, my daughter died of an overdose. I thought it was extremely shameful that she even misdirected the conversation the way she did. But, she disappeared, I thought, as a public figure in this arena and didn't give it much more thought. But here we go. This is exactly who belongs as his running mate, is somebody who would turn and twist every single thing into something that has to do with them directly. And Ted Cruz, yeah, great. Mathematically eliminated, not the nominee, but I'm going to select a running mate anyway. I mean,
this is McCain and Palin. And I actually did a juxtaposition on my show. Go to OccupyCorporatism.com and listen to it. I actually did a juxtaposition of Carly Fiorina. She broke out into song with her kindergarten jazz tunes that she sings on the bus with Cruz's kids. That was hilarious.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
We also have to remember that, the things that Cruz talked about when he was explaining why he nominated her, I thought one of the things was very funny. He choked when he announced her as his VP. He actually choked. I don't know if he's really sure about this, and I think that at some level he realizes it's ridiculous to announce your vice president when you haven't gotten the RNC's nomination yet. That's not how this system works.
No, it generally isn't. And again, I say that ostensibly, publicly, he's been eliminated. So it's really completely pointless. It's like, you know what? I've decided that I have a running mate, and, so I'm going to select Susanne Posel as my running mate now, even though I have no nomination or no pathway clear to the White House. We are running, as co-candidates now. There you go.
Yeah.
Like, and meanwhile, not to get away from Glenn Beck too far, by the way.
No, Glenn Beck is part of this because he's out on the trail talking about how God anointed, God created Ted Cruz. From birth, Ted Cruz has been primed by Yahweh himself came down and spit on that man's head and just rubbed it right in the center of his forehead. And he was born to be God, to be president.
Right. I am not digging God's political selections. I mean, to my memory, Pat Robertson was told to run for president by God. George W. Bush, he actually won, but was told to run for president by God, right? And meanwhile, Ted Cruz. Yeah, that's good.
God's an asshole.
Either that or he is just one of the funniest guys ever, because, to have these guys run around and make these statements and I don't know. I'm not sure what it is, but it's a weird collection. If you take a look at the individuals that were told to run for president by God or who were anointed by God or whatever, it's a really weird combination.
Maybe okay. God just watched too many episodes of Punk'd.
Either that or, that could be one of those things. And I'll bet you something else. They should make a Netflix series out of just that right there. The people that were inspired by God to run for president. I would watch it. It would be entertaining. That's for sure. But Glenn Beck falling apart, sorry, I got to smirk a little bit as it's happening. Not because, not because I have anything against him personally, but just that it at least shows that there is a limit to the amount of money that people will spend on, if you're right wing, you can do no wrong, but if you're left wing, you're the Antichrist, as a constant. So, I don't know, it makes me feel a little better that maybe, all is not lost in the world of advertising and stupidity. So, I'm sorry. Anyway.
Absolutely. I've got this next story. I'm not sure how to segue into it, so I'm just going to jump right in.
We don't need a segue. We don't need no stinking segues on the Ochelli effect, I assure you. Okay, because they will follow it one way or another and create one of their own if we didn't give them one, so go for it anyway.
Have you ever wondered why some people look younger than others? They don't look their age. Dick Clark, what was up with that guy?
That was a strange situation, and that has happened a few times. That has happened a few times where I've noticed somebody in the media who completely does not appear to be elderly, and yet if you check their birth records, they were born 30, 40 years before me, and it's like, geez, why doesn't he look older than I do?
Right.
Yeah, and absolutely. So,
well, would you like to know why?
Yes, I would. Okay.
There are some people who have a mutation of a gene. This was discovered in Rotherham, scientists there in the UK. What they found is, on a molecular level, the face changes over time and ultimately develops or ages slowly. But with people with a mutation of this one gene, and it doesn't matter if you smoke too much, it doesn't matter if you sit out and toast yourself in the sun, it doesn't matter what you do. If you have a mutation of this one gene, you're going to look at least 2 years older than you actually are. And I find that highly unfair.
Highly unfair. 2 years is not that big a deal.
Well, but in some cases we're talking maybe close to, like you were mentioning, upwards of 30 years. Look at Ralph Macchio. That guy still looks like he could do the Karate Kid,
Yeah, that is true. That is true. And, and if you don't believe that your face changes over time, go ahead and flip back at some pictures of yourself somewhere and you'll figure it out. And if that's not good enough for you, try this one. Take a mirror, put it on the floor, and lean over and take a look at your face. And generally, most of you will find that your face doesn't remain in the same place as your face used to be. That's at least my experience. Who knows? Your experiences may differ. But I've noticed that, the skin gets a little bit looser. This kind of thing happens to just about everybody. But on occasion, there are people that don't seem to devolve, into that stranger look. I don't know how to describe it. I guess it's just the aging look where everything seems to begin to adhere like candle wax down the side of a jar. You know what I'm saying?
But then you have people like Susan Sarandon. She was just on Real Time with Bill Maher. That woman still looks incredible. I mean, yes, she doesn't look like she did in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but you definitely wouldn't say that she's old. And this woman is like 70. She was just climbing the side of a mountain. She broke her ankle. It's amazing to me. Heather Mirren is another woman, fantastically beautiful still, and she's 69 years old. Now, the gene that I was talking about is the MC1R, and I don't know if there's a test if you can find out whether or not you have the mutation.
Coming soon, I'm sure.
Pretty soon, I'm sure. Yeah, 23andMe will probably come up with that. And if you don't know who that is, go to OccupyCorporatism.com and find out who they are. I'll give you a little hint. Google Ventures funded them into existence. Anyway.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Well, the founder of 23andMe is the ex-wife of Sergey Brin. I think I'm pronouncing his last name wrong. He is the CEO of Google. So there you go.
Okay.
Helping out his ex-wife.
Now, you know what's weird on the flip side of that, though, Suzanne, is you ever notice now some people will say, well, look, plastic surgery is a great thing. But if you ever notice over time, there's a reason why they call it plastic surgery. If you continuously go at yourself with this stuff, you start to look kind of plastic-ish. It's really, really weird. They start losing some of the human element when they keep stretching and pulling the skin back and all that. You ever notice that about some people? I'm not going to name names here, but we know who we're talking about.
Absolutely. You see it. Well, Joan Rivers, I mean, she looked way weird. Like, even elves were looking at her like, you don't look right. But here's a really crazy thing. Statistically speaking, in 2015, the amount of teenagers getting lip augmentation rose by 20%. Oh my gosh, what are teenagers doing getting stuff injected into their lips to make them fuller? At that age, you haven't finished yet. You don't know what the finished product is going to look like. Maybe you're going to just come out with full lips like Kylie Jenner, or maybe you could just suck on the top of a glass like a lot of women did when they were talking about Kylie Jenner's lips a couple of months ago, and then they ended up going to the hospital because they screwed themselves up. I think that there should be a limit. And I know that this is like a nanny state kind of thing, and maybe definitely it has to do with the parents, but think about this. I mean, the body hasn't finished yet. We don't know what the finished product is. Wait until it's finished, and by then you'll be in your 20s. By the way, you could pay for your own augmentation if you wanted it, but then go ahead and stick as much silicone as you can in any part of your body.
Well, what's even weirder than that, I would say, in the past few years is an even greater rise in the use of Botox. That's even stranger to me. The concept of utilizing a toxin to eliminate certain things on the skin and the bags under the eyes and all that other weird stuff where they're just, they have all sorts of products now to inject you with or to introduce Botox to get rid of all sorts of little blemishes and things. That's even stranger to me than the plastic surgery thing, which I wasn't even aware that there was that much lip augmentation going on. That I don't quite understand that. I guess some people would find the fuller set of lips more attractive and that kind of thing, and I get it if you're like one of these people who looks like one of those cartoon characters that they didn't bother to do anything but draw a line on. But when you take a look at the use of Botox, isn't that a strange phenomenon too?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Go ahead and inject a poison into your skin, one of the poorest part of your body, and look. Let's look at laugh lines a little bit differently. That means you enjoyed your life. That means you're a happy person. If you've got that thing across your forehead, you worry a lot, and okay, I could understand that. But that's what happens. I think that the problem is it's only been probably the last 150 years or less that we've actually had the quality of life with the longevity of life. Just a couple of centuries ago, if you were 55, you were really old, and you mostly died at 35 or 45. And that goes all the way back to Roman times, too. So living longer, I don't think that we thought that all the way through to realize that as we get older, we have to celebrate the aging process and allow people to age. And I'm not just saying age gracefully and just go with it, don't dye your hair. I dye my hair. I don't like the grays. But at the same time, I'm not injecting all of this stuff into my face. I'm not even thinking about where I'm going to get the money for an augmentation of any sort. By the way, with the millennials, butt implants have become very popular in the last couple of years. Lots of people are sitting on extra cushion back there that God didn't give them, apparently.
And another odd thing, too, the butt implant thing. I've heard about that. I haven't really looked at the statistics on it, but, I mean, that's really becoming very popular. I mean, I can understand if you're kind of cursed with something like I don't have very much of a backside myself. I kind of wish I had a little extra cushion for comfort now and then, but it's odd to me that people do it for the aesthetic, of it. And I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't get the idea of these major augmentations that really change the character of the natural body. Now, that being said, of course, I'm tattooed, but that to me is a little different. And I don't suggest any of this stuff to anybody. I say you do what you want with your own body, but it does get weird when you're trying to literally augment the entire aesthetic existence that you have. And a butt implant, inject your lips, change your breast size a bit, and next thing you know, you don't even remotely resemble the person that you used to. I knew one person that wasn't a famous person at all, but had gone through all that, and I could never get over how the two different images in my head did not line up at all. It was a woman, and she completely redid her body, and it was just the strangest thing to me. But I guess people do what they do. I don't know. I can't get on board with it, but it's one of those things.
I can't get behind that. In the infamous words of William Shatner, if you have never heard a William Shatner song, go on YouTube and listen to one. It is hilarious, and that is one of his lines. I can't get behind that. Since we're talking about butts, I thought it was appropriate.
Absolutely. The other thing is, if you're going to check out William Shatner songs, I definitely suggest Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. His cover of that is just absolutely hysterical as well. So there you go. But
who knew? Who knew? And he doesn't sing, folks. He just talks throughout the whole thing, but he does it in such a Captain Kirk kind of way that it's just only Shatner. And it's worth it. It's actually, I have it downloaded to iTunes, and I listen to it, not on a regular basis, but if I need a laugh, I listen to this stuff. It's hilarious. It's the best stuff in the world.
Definitely reminds me of the old days with Dr. Demento. I got to tell you that.
But it's T.J. Hooker.
It's Captain Kirk doing your parodies for you, but he's serious. That's the most hysterical part about it.
It's not like Weird Al Yankovic where it's a joke. He's actually written this. He actually got a real band. Some of his songs, he gets actual musicians, bands that you would recognize to play the music with him. So he's taking this seriously, but listening to that, you just can't take that seriously. I'm sorry, I missed the boat on that one. Bodie McBoatface has sailed.
and we are almost out of time, Suzanne. Do you have one more, or should we?
Well, if we only have a few minutes, we should probably just chuckle along because I do. But I figured I captured more than we needed because I figured we would go off on tangents. So,
well, isn't that the way it always goes? But look, if you want to check out...
Since it's the end of the show and we're talking about butts, isn't it appropriate?
There you go, the butt end of the show. Thank you so much, comparing my show to somebody's backside.
Hey,
awesome.
Everyone's got an opinion.
That too. And you definitely do, but the stories that we covered tonight do not represent necessarily what you will find at OccupyCorporatism.com, which is Suzanne's website. She does a show called Hardline, which you can download over there as well. And Suzanne, thanks for joining me, and also thanks to Gillian Trebilcock for joining me in the first hour. That was an odd discussion despite the technical difficulties. But Suzanne, thanks again. I had a good laugh, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely.